Welcome back to Top 10 Places. If you've a penchant for the macabre, or you just want to know what's going down in some of the highest security prisons on the planet, then you've come to the right place. Today we're counting down 10 of the harshest prisons in the world, the kinds of places you hope you never have to visit. From maximum security to extreme security, these prisons are sure to make your blood run cold with fear. And be sure to stay tuned for our number one spot, a North Korean prison known for its unspeakable living conditions. But before we jump into the video, consider leaving us a like and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us make the best content possible. And if you never want to miss another upload, hit the bell icon down below. Without further delay, let's get into it. Number 10. Terre Haute, United States. This Indiana prison complex is made up of low security, medium security, and maximum security units. It's earned itself the nickname Guantanamo North and is home to the Boston bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. Mr. Tsarnaev is currently on death row at Terre Haute. Told you things would get macabre? In 2008, Terre Haute was reported to have grossly inadequate living conditions in its special confinement unit, which is the unit where death row inmates are held. The prison was also accused of denying its prisoners medical care and mental health services. The icing on the cake? It said that the prisoners were subjected to so much noise that they began suffering from sleep deprivation. Just recently, in January 2021, Terre Haute had the highest number of COVID-19 cases in the federal prison system, including its death row inmates. Federal euthanasia has been halted at Terre Haute since U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that the Department of Justice would review its capital punishment policy. Lucky prisoners. Number 9. Kamiti Maximum Security Prison, Kenya. Kenya is infamous for the tough living conditions of its prisoners, and Kamiti Maximum Security Prison is widely regarded as the worst prison in the country. Found in the Roysambu constituency, the prison was built in 1954 and was modelled after an old-style colonial system to house offenders during a state of emergency declared 2 years before. Proof of the darkness of Kamiti is that it still has its original gallows, though the last execution to take place at the prison was in 1987, thankfully. Kamiti Maximum Security Prison is notoriously overcrowded, with remarkably unsanitary living conditions. The official capacity of this prison is 1,200, though reports suggest that there are between 1,800 and 2,500 inmates stuffed inside. Serious health conditions, including syphilis, gonorrhea, dysentery, tuberculosis, and HIV and AIDS, run rampant at Kamiti. Though the prison was already infamous for housing political prisoners and for its executions by hanging, it became all the more famous in 2008 when a riot broke out, was caught on camera and shown on television. Oh, and did we mention that 3 convicted terror suspects escaped from there in 2021? Number 8. Black Dolphin Prison, Russia. The Black Dolphin Prison, also called Penal Colony Number 6, is located near the Russia-Kazakhstan border and is reserved for the most dangerous and violent convicted criminals in the country. Amongst the prison's roster, you'll find serial killers, cannibals, sex offenders, and Chechen terrorists. Black Dolphin earns its name from the dolphin sculpture created by the inmates, which sits on the grass at the front of the prison reception. The inmates here are kept under constant 24-hour surveillance, with guards making rounds every 15 minutes. Inmates are housed 2 per cell, each of which is behind 3 sets of steel doors to offer extra isolation from the guards and other inmates. The prisoners at Black Dolphin are only given 90 minutes of time outside per day, in a barren concrete exercise yard. When an inmate is moved anywhere in the facility, they're blindfolded, handcuffed, and forced to walk bent over so that they aren't able to learn the layout of the prison, overpower guards, or interact with other inmates. Still not scared? You ain't seen nothing yet. Our number 1 spot is coming up soon. Number 7. Mendoza Prison, Argentina. With an inmate population that exceeds nearly 3 times the prison's limit, Argentina's Mendoza prison is severely overcrowded. As many as 5 inmates are crammed into the prison's tiny cells, many of which are forced to sleep on the floor without mattresses or pillows. Amnesty International published a report on the prison conditions in 2005, stating that people imprisoned in Mendoza are in such a desperate situation but they have gone as far as to sew their mouths up in demand of better living conditions. Dark stuff. At the time that this report was published, the conditions in the prison were so dire that prisoners were regularly tortured, often to death. What's worse, inmates also received vastly inadequate medical care, and the prison also lacked a proper sewerage system. Number 6. Diyarbakir Prison, Turkey. Diyarbakir was built in 1980 by Turkey's Ministry of Justice. After the coup d'etat that took place in Turkey on September 12, 1980, Diyarbakir became a martial law military prison, in which torture was a common method of forced assimilation of the Kurds. After the coup, a total of 650,000 people were detained, most of whom were beaten and tortured, many of whom passed within the walls of Diyarbakir prison. Early in its existence, prisoners here were subjected to horrific acts of systematic, planned torture. Though it is rarely confirmed by superiors, hundreds of testimonies from former inmates tell of mental and physical abuse, deprivation, mock executions, sexual assault, electric shock, and more. The abuse of Diyarbakir's Kurdish prisoners fueled the rise of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which still battles against the Turkish state today. These days, Diyarbakir is still a working prison, and unfortunately is still known for its plethora of human rights violations. However, in 2021, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey, announced that the prison would be transformed into a cultural centre. Needless to say, he received very mixed reviews. Enjoying the video so far? Leave us a like and sound off in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Number 5. San Quentin State Prison, United States. San Quentin is infamous for its criminal violence, and as the oldest prison in California, it became home to many of the world's most horrific criminals, including Scott Peterson, Charles Manson, and Sirhan Sirhan. It had the only death row facility in the state for more than 700 prisoner executions, and is also home to the only gas chamber in California. However, early in 2022, the state began the process of closing San Quentin's death row and relocating inmates, 3 years after executions in the state were ended. Over the years, especially in the 1960s and 70s, San Quentin earned a reputation for riots and corruption, all of which were encouraged by prison guards. While it's no longer a hub for death row inmates, San Quentin remains one of the worst prisons in the world. Number 4. Gitarama Prison, Rwanda. Gitarama Prison is known for being the most overcrowded prison in the world, thanks to the fact that it's home to more than 7,000 prisoners in a facility that was built to hold, at most, 400. Most of the inmates are suspects of the Rwandan genocide that took place in 1994. Given the prison's unbelievable overcrowding, men and women locked up in Gitarama are forced to stand barefoot on filthy ground for all hours of the day, causing their feet to begin rotting away. The fate of many prisoners here is amputation. However, since there's only one full-time doctor dedicated to the prison, most are not able to receive the treatment they need. The result of this mistreatment is a sad one. An average of 6 prisoners die in Gitarama every day. This is certainly not a place you ever want to find yourself in. Ready for our number 1 spot? Coming up soon. Number 3. United States Penitentiary, Administrative Maximum Facility, USA. Also known as ADX Florence or the Alcatraz of the Rockies, this is the highest security prison in the entire United States. Built in 1994, the United States Penitentiary houses some of the most dangerous criminals on the planet, including Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and Zacarias Moussari, who was involved in the 9/11 attacks. At this facility, inmates spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in their tiny concrete cells, with barely enough space to stand up and take but a few steps. The windows in these cells are minuscule, and prisoners receive their 3 meals through a small slot in the metal door of the cell. When prisoners are allowed out of their cell for their 1-hour recreation period of the day, they are made to wear several restraints and are escorted to a small outdoor cage by several guards. Things at the United States Penitentiary are so dire that former warden Robert Hood once described the place as the clean version of hell. Yikes. Number 2. Guldani Prison, Georgia. Located in Tbilisi, Georgia, Guldani Prison was the subject of a scandal in 2012 which called international attention to the country's practice of prisoner torture at the hands of prison guards. Numerous abuses, including physical and sexual assault, were revealed in a video filmed by a former prison guard turned whistleblower. This video sparked incredible protests across the country and even inspired actual reform regarding how inmates in Georgian prisons are treated. Though the conditions in the country's prisons have certainly improved over the last decade, Guldani Prison remains in the spotlight as the site of protests caused by the imprisonment of the former president of Georgia. While various protest groups are both in favor of and against the former president's release, the situation has subsequently brought light to Guldani Prison's horrible inmate conditions. Number 1. Camp 14, Kaesong, North Korea. And last but certainly not least, taking our number 1 spot for the worst prison in the world is Camp 14, Kaesong in North Korea. Camp 14 is a 60-mile prison facility located in the middle of North Korea. And according to reports by the US Department of State, the facility was built in 1959 north of Pyongyang. Camp 14 is considered a political prisoner camp and is able to hold up to 15,000 prisoners. Each of the prisoners here is serving a life sentence for being an enemy of the state, a sentence barely grounded in reality and often handed out to any North Korean citizen deemed suspicious. The inmates held within Camp 14 are routinely starved and are forced into labor in textiles, mining and farming. What's worse is that this facility also employs the outlandish policy known as 3 generations of punishment, which means that many prisoners in Camp 14 are only there simply because they're related to someone suspected of a crime. The sad thing is that most of them will die in this prison without ever having committed a crime themselves. Well, that's all, folks. Thanks so much for watching. And now, as usual, it's time for another bonus fun fact. Did you know that, for young or first-time offenders, a suspended prison term is especially effective at reducing their chances of committing further crimes? This is because the mere threat of punishment is sufficient. Let us know what you thought of the video in the comment section below. Be sure to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you never want to miss another upload, hit the bell icon down below to be notified every time we post a new video. Until next time, stay out of trouble.